Um, I don't know, it's really hard to say. I'm probably gonna say 2,433. Stock. Once again, you're wrong. It's definitely 47,335 and a half. Yeah. Based on my trajectory, I would say 1,004. Hey, it's your turn. Hey, it's your turn. It's your turn. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll probably say 40. Oh no, please, no. I don't want to guess. 25? 78. Oh! What? Oh, mother by Odin's spear. This is incorrect. It could not be this. I missed. What? I missed.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Eugene Reviews. I am your host, Eugene, and today we are going over another entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it happens to be the sequel to the 2012 smash box office hit Avengers, none other than Avengers Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron already built up with the anticipation from the impressive performance once again from the 2012 Avengers film. Yeah, a lot of hype for this movie. I was so hyped to watch this whenever it was initially released in theaters. As far as my history, I do remember watching this in theaters with a group of college friends the day before its initial release. Funny story, my friend went to go see it 2.5 times on opening day. Yeah, 2.5 times. He watched it initially with us, I think, and then he stayed for another half of it and then went with another group of friends to watch it for a second, official second time. And yeah, that one story kind of sticks out to me when it comes to Ultron and thinking about watching it in theaters. But yeah, I do remember watching it in theaters. I do remember the hype for it. I remember big buzz all throughout because of the fact that, one, it's a Marvel film, it's an Avengers film, and it's a sequel, so bigger and better things to be expected. All right, short and sweet history in regards to my viewings of this. Now let's go ahead and hit all three acts for Age of Ultron. Act 1, Development. Avengers Age of Ultron, take 1. So Avengers Age of Ultron was already announced as a part of Marvel's Phase 2, the culmination of Phase 2 for May 1st, 2015. There was a quite bit of a scare for Robert Downey Jr. as his contract already expired after Iron Man 3. He signed a 4-picture deal with Iron Man 2, Avengers, and of course Iron Man 3, but there was no word yet of him re-signing for future films. Eventually they did get him back, and they did get the rest of the cast from the original Avengers film back, so everybody's back. Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr., Jeremy Renner, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Samuel L. Jackson, Kobe Smulders, all of them are back. Even Joss Whedon, the director of the first Avengers film, was back. And Whedon wanted to play a bit of a more personal touch and a more painful touch to this sequel for the Avengers. I mean, yeah, it's kind of typical for a sequel to add in more things that made the first one great, to make it even bigger and larger in scale, but for Whedon, he kind of felt like dwindling down the scope of it and making things more personal. He said death would play a major role in this film, citing films like The Empire Strikes Back and The Godfather Part 2 as essential sequels that he based Age of Ultron from. Now, along with the recurring cast comes a new cast of characters, including Aaron Taylor Johnson playing Quicksilver and Elizabeth Olsen playing Scarlet Witch. Now, these two characters should ring an alarm in your head because, yes, they are still under the banner of 20th Century Fox and under the ownership of Fox with the X-Men. But as a part of a deal with 20th Century Fox, Marvel was able to share the rights to both these characters and be able to showcase them in Age of Ultron. That's why it's a little befuddling to see, because in X-Men Days of Future Past, a 2014 Fox film for Marvel, you see a Quicksilver character played by Evan Peters. And now here in 2015 for Marvel, for Disney's MCU, you have Aaron Taylor Johnson playing Quicksilver, the same character but a different narrative. So yeah, they shared the rights, both Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, between 20th Century Fox and Marvel at a time when they were both separate entities. And at just over, I want to say $352 million, Avengers Age of Ultron holds the record as the second most expensive film ever made, just behind another Disney property, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. So once again, Downey re-signing a multi-film deal to go along with the original cast that's coming back to this film, as well as Joss Whedon coming back. Joss Whedon focusing on a more personal and more hurtful scale that involves death instead of, a bigger, grandiose sequel treatment for Avengers. The broad rights between 20th Century Fox and Marvel for the characters Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And then the second most expensive film ever made, just behind Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Right, a lot of production notes to go over. Now let's see if everything's executed well as we go into the meat of it, which is the execution. Act 2, Execution. Avengers Age of Ultron, take 1. So right off the bat, I will say that the Avengers sequel, Age of Ultron, is fun. It's a fun, enjoyable film. Do I think it's better than the first Avengers film? No, not by a long shot. But it's still entertaining nonetheless. If you're a fan of action, I think you'll have your taste buds filled with the amount of action that they displayed in this. I think visually it's appealing, seeing all of the characters kind of interact, seeing all of the characters fight and combat as a team, especially in the final climactic battle in Sokovia. But that's the thing. There were so many new characters. I mentioned Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch being a part of this project, but the big baddie in this film is none other than James Spader's Ultron. Ultron's an artificial intelligence created by Tony Stark to kind of have a suit of armor around the world to protect the world, but it ends up kind of counteracting Tony in itself. It became knowledgeable, it became aware, it became questionable. And with that came this hesitancy. Along that came this sense of rage and chaos, and thus Ultron was born. Ultron really discovering the darkness of humanity and the world, and deciding to take matters into his own hands and wanting to evolve the world. For the longest, ever since the first Iron Man film, Paul Bettany was the voice of Jarvis. Now he actually inputs his own physical role in this by becoming Vision, this brand new modified artificial intelligence that's supposed to combat against Ultron and joins the Avengers essentially as a member of the team. And unique character, yes, but once again, so many different characters, so many new characters, it's really hard to keep up and really kind of fully invest yourself evenly with everyone that you see play out on this film. James Spader is, he's a phenomenal actor. He's a phenomenal voice actor too. The way he speaks, his tone, his rhetoric, it's pretty spellbinding. So it's understandable that he would play a character such as Ultron, a menacing robotic character such as Ultron. It's understandable James Spader taking on this role. It was a bit quirky at first listening to him, especially when it infused a little bit of a more humorous dialogue. But overall, I think James Spader does a good job with playing Ultron and kind of evoking this menacing tone and voice from this antagonist that's literally in the headlines of this film, Age of Ultron. Overall, it's spectacular, yes. It's really visually groundbreaking. But is it impressive enough to say, yeah, I would put this over the first Avengers film, or for that matter, other films that came out before then? Probably not. Let's pump the brakes on that. A lot of weird dialogue. Yeah, the whole language thing, was fun and all. But there was just kind of unnecessary little, kind of quirks and gags and puns that I feel like weren't really necessary, but kind of was there to bring light in dark situations. Just to name a couple of them, you know, Strucker saying, "No surrender," and then turning to his guy, "I'm going to surrender." Funny, yes, but necessary, maybe not. The other one, just, you know, moments after that scene, Iron Man invading the Sokovia little bunker and blasting all of the enemies and saying, "Good talk," and one guy like, "No, it's not." Fun, yes, but I don't know. It just felt like it wasn't properly placed in the right position of this film. Maybe there was a little bit too many more puns than anticipated in regards to dialogue. But overall, I think in some way, yes, it's still a really great and impressive film. That is a unique entry for the MCU. Were there some subplots in there that were a bit questionable, like Thor, you know, going God knows where just to find out about Vision? Maybe. Was it confusing a little bit in regards to the overall depth of Ultron and his ways around, you know, technology and being able to stop him, even for that matter? Was it a little bit befuddling? Maybe. But I do like the risk it took. It eliminated one of its new characters, it eliminated Quicksilver, and did really bring a sense of death. You were thinking someone was gonna die, a certain someone would die in the film, but ends up being somebody else. There isn't really a true investment until you see one of the characters, you know, killed, unfortunately. But it had to be Quicksilver, and understandably so. But yes, you know, presenting that aspect into us was really a nice little spice to differentiate both Age of Ultron from the original Avengers film. So in that fashion, I do think that it's unique to have that identity for this film, for it to stand out on its own as a sequel, as an Avengers film, as an MCU film overall. Once again, it's fun, it's entertaining, overall it's action-packed. I do think there was a bit too many characters for us to digest and for us to really kind of evenly be invested in. James Spader does a quirky yet magnificent job in voicing Ultron. The dialogue was a bit unnecessary when it comes to the amount of jokes that they placed and kind of the timing of it. But overall, once again, fun, exciting, not as good as the first one, but still good nonetheless. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and see the response in Act 3. Act 3, response. Avengers Age of Ultron, take 1. So being a Disney film, being a Marvel film, being a sequel, being a superhero film, you know it's gonna garner big bucks. But was it able to garner as much, if not more, than the first Avengers film? Garnering in $1.4 billion worldwide. That's a big number, right? But surprisingly, hear me out on this. It was only the 4th highest grossing film of 2015. $1.4 billion on any other year would have definitely been number 1. But in 2015, it was number 4. It fell just behind another Disney property, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. It fell behind a Universal film and a sequel, if you will, Jurassic World. And it fell behind another sequel in Furious 7. Can you imagine that? Age of Ultron, a Marvel film. $1.4 billion, and it was only number 4 overall worldwide in the box office. But anyways, with that crossing $1 billion, that would mark the 3rd billion-dollar film under the MCU banner, with Avengers and with Iron Man 3. Overall, ratings-wise, I think that it's a little bit lesser. With the first Avengers film being in like the low 90s, mid 90s, this film was just about the high 70s, maybe low 80s, if you will. And also received mixed reviews in China, surprisingly, which is the 2nd highest market in regards to film. And it was all due to poor translations, which is also another factor that helped in the mixed reviews for Guardians of the Galaxy. So in a sense, the response was overwhelming yet underwhelming. Yes, $1.4 billion worldwide, which is a lot of money, but surprisingly, that was 4th in that year. It may have gotten some good reviews, but they weren't as high as the previous film. And then poor reviews from China, the 2nd biggest movie market in the world, because of poor translations, which is kind of what contributed to mixed reviews to another film in Guardians of the Galaxy. All right, with all 3 acts out of the way, let's go ahead and hit my verdict for Age of Ultron. So as I reflect on Age of Ultron, especially now that it's been 5 years since its release, it's still surprisingly fun, it's still entertaining, it's still just a joy to see. Visually, it does have some depth to it when it comes to character arcs. Even though I don't put this over the first film, I do think that this is entertaining and and worthy enough to put in the middle of the list when it comes to MCU films. Hell, even the middle of the list when it comes to overall superhero films. I just think it suffered in itself when it introduced so many different characters, so many new characters, and feeling like it was a little bit too much to digest. Really too much, too soon for us to really invest ourselves in, especially Ultron and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Effective characters, don't get me wrong, it's just really overwhelming to see them kind of shoved in our face. And not to mention Vision. I do think it's a good film, but it's really unfortunate when you have to follow the first Avengers film, which did such a remarkable job revealing us who these characters are, who these superheroes are, and then having to kind of topple that, that's really a big feat in itself. It's already a big hill to climb up, but they tried. They may not have gotten there as quick as we'd like, but I think they've gotten there. And as 5 years has passed since the release, I think it's fair to say this is one of the more underrated MCU films in its entire canon. I think people, if anything, should give a chance to Age of Ultron and rewatch it. There is a rewatchability to it. Give it another chance, take a look at it, especially 5 years after when we've seen the other MCU films that have come. And I think you'll see a new light, kind of like how I saw it. But with that said, it's entertaining, it's thrilling, it's action-packed, lots of colorful new characters, the same great recurring characters from the Avengers. Overall, it's just a nice entry, a good chunk of an entry, and it lays down some foundation of what other characters we can expect in the future and what kind of potential storylines we could see down the road. With all that stated, I'm going to go ahead and give Avengers Age of Ultron a very solid 8.3 out of 10. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this film is the 11th film chronologically in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it is the 12th one we've covered. So somewhere on this screen, you're going to see my list thus far of MCU films, ranked from best to worst. Once again, the films on the bottom half of the list I do not think are terrible. I don't think they're bad. I just think that the other films above it are better. All of these films are great and they're so unique in itself. But when it comes to seeing which one's the best, there's got to be one at the bottom somehow. Come on, guys. So that's my list of MCU films. So if you're following my list, you'll know that we are going to conclude Phase 2 with another new MCU character known as Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man. So we will be discovering Ant-Man sometime soon in the foreseeable future. I am not going to be doing another MCU film for the next couple weeks because there are a couple events coming up soon that we are going to have fun with. But until then, let me know what you guys thought about Avengers Age of Ultron. Is there anything interesting that I missed out that you would like to kind of further explain or delve in that you think is unique? Leave them in the comments section below. I'd love to hear anything and everything about Age of Ultron that I might have missed. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out there about my channel. Also follow me on Instagram at Eugene Reviews. You'll see all of the other previous reviews and the links to their videos, as well as top 5 recommendations for the month, as well as this month, October, a very spooky Halloween edition of top 5 recommendations of films. But yeah, thank you for tuning in once again. I really hope you enjoyed watching this just as much as I've been enjoying doing these. These have been, these are challenging as each video goes along, but hey, it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't challenging, right? But until then, this is Eugene signing off for another episode of Eugene Reviews, and I will see you guys next week for a very special, spooky, frightening, scary edition of Eugene Reviews. But until then, that is a wrap. Phew, finally. Got through that movie review. Yes. This time, no mistakes, none whatsoever.